It's 2024 and the electric car business isn't exactly going to plan. In the mass segments, there have already been price corrections. In the luxury segment, there has been a slowdown in interest. Depreciation has been heavy. The early adopters have already adopted their EVs and the fence-sitters aren't crossing that fence. In fact, that has led to many manufacturers walking back from their full electrification by 2030 plans. And into that difficult environment comes the new Audi Q6 e-tron. The going is not that easy, but Audi definitely have the tools to reinvigorate this segment. It starts with the positioning. Now, the Q8 e-tron, it is really good, but at 1.2 crores, it is expensive. The Q6 e-tron, on the other hand, is around 15 to 20% cheaper than the Q8 e-tron, and that means you're looking at an India price of around 80 to 90 lakh rupees. So that's a good start. The second is the size of this thing. Now, it's only 13 centimeters shorter than a Q8 e-tron. It also has a 2.9 meter long wheelbase. So in terms of interior space, you aren't going to feel shortchanged. And the third and most important is the platform. This is the PPE architecture, Premium Platform Electric. This is the first Audi on it. This is going to be shared with the entire Volkswagen group, even the Porsche Macan that has this PPE platform, and it has got better range, better equipment, better motors, better battery, and all new interior architecture. Everything that the Volkswagen group knows about electrification has been thrown at it. And that means Audi really has the tools to reinvigorate it, get interest back into this segment. Welcome to Evo India and welcome to our comprehensive review of the Q6 e-tron, including the SQ6 e-tron. That's right, the SQ6 e-tron is also going to be launched in India, and by when? We're looking at towards the end of the year, so within 6 months this should come to India. So exciting times ahead for Audi in terms of the electric offering for India. The newly designed front suspension has a significant improvement in terms of the driving dynamics. Now, for the first time in an Audi, the control arms are arranged in front of the suspension arms in the direction of travel, and that has a benefit in terms of the axle kinematics. Also, as you can see, the steering is mounted ahead of the motor, and that enables the short front overhangs. Otherwise, in other electric cars, for instance, the RS e-tron GT, the steering is actually behind the motor, and that's why it's got a longer overhang. So this is also done in terms of getting that nice proportions for the styling. Rack also, it is directly bolted onto the subframe, so there are no rubber bushes, and that also helps agility as well as the driving dynamics. Being an Audi, of course, it is quattro, and you get two motors on each of the axles. The front axle motor is an asynchronous motor, the ASM motor, and the so-called boost motor. So this only comes into effect when you are sending the Q6 e-tron, when you're driving dynamically. Otherwise, this is spinning freely, and the ASM motor is used because when it is spinning freely, it has less losses than the PCM motor. So this puts out 275 Newton meters, whereas on the rear, you get a PCM motor, a compact permanent synchronous motor. So that's the rear motor, and this is your drive motor. You get 580 Newton meters out of this motor. The two different motors are used also so that the Q6 e-tron has a more rear biased driving feel, and that is the new Audi DNA in terms of the driving character. So that's why more torque to the rear axle to give it a more rear biased driving stance. Now, this is an 800 volt architecture. The battery is mounted between the axles. The PPE is a pure electric platform. There won't be any combustion engine on this. The battery pack, it weighs 590 kilos. This is a 100 kilowatt hour gross output and 94.9 kilowatt hour net output from this battery pack. In terms of charging time, you get 10 to 80% in 21 minutes. That's obviously if you're on a fast charger, it charges up to 270 kilowatts. In 10 minutes, you get 255 kilometers of range. And with your 11 kilowatt AC wall box charger, the charging time they quote is overnight. There are three variants on the Q6 e-tron. You start with the Q6, you also have the Q6 Performance, which is the longer range version, a range of 641 kilometers, but only rear wheel drive, no quattro. And I think for now that won't be coming to India because obviously quattro is the bedrock of Audi's brand. What we are going to start off with is the SQ6 e-tron, and this is coming to India. Now this is going to be around 15% more expensive than the regular Q6 e-tron. So in India you're looking at a price of maybe 1.2 crore rupees, which is expensive. So this will sit at the very top of the range. But this being Evo India, this is the one that we start our driving with.
It's gonna get personal.
In terms of driving, there's a big push towards what Audi calls the driving DNA. Now, if you remember Audis in the past, the driving characteristic used to be a bit nose heavy. The engines were always ahead of the front axle line. And that meant when you pushed it, it would always go into understeer. It always had a lot of grip. Quattro always delivered excellent grip. But at the limit, it wasn't really playful and it would push into understeer. Here, that has all changed, and for the better. So the things that have made that possible. First are the two different kinds of motors. So the front motor is basically a boost motor. The rear motor is the one that does most of the work, and it has more torque output. So that gives a more rear biased driving stance. You have wider tires at the rear, so staggered tires. So that also helps this. You also get an ESP off button. You can't switch it off completely, but you can stick it into ESP Sport, and Audi say that they have reduced the electronic intervention in ESP Sport, so you can make the tail wag around a bit as well. And of course, this is the SQ6, the sportier variant in the lineup. So I'll stick it into dynamic mode. When you put it in dynamic mode, everything hunkers down. The electronic suspension, that becomes a little stiffer. You also have this quattro sound or something. So a lot of woo 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 the car does, and it clearly moves. This is a quick car, a quick electric car, which actually enjoys flying around corners. In fact, this section of road, it's a little bumpy, but the ride comfort is pretty impressive if you ask me.
It's gonna get personal.
The SQ6 obviously gets more output, 375 bhp, which goes up to 506 bhp with launch control activated. It delivers 0 to 100 in 4.3 seconds, top speed of 230 kilometers per hour, and a WLTP range of 598 kilometers. It has electronically controlled adaptive air suspension, and what that does is monitors what's happening at each of the dampers every millisecond, and that gives a great blend between ride and handling. And seriously, in terms of handling, this is actually pretty good. It showcases the benefits of a platform that has been co-developed with Porsche. With these electric cars, you don't really have that ESP traction control intervention. Everything feels smooth and seamless. You can't really make out when the tires are also running out of grip. It doesn't aggressively push into understeer. It stays balanced and neutral. And when you step on it at the exit of a corner like I am doing right now, you do feel the rear biased driving character. And that rear biased driving character does everything for that feel of sportiness. The steering also is nice. It doesn't feel loose or disconnected. The SQ6 is at the top of the range in terms of the performance. There will be an R SQ6 in the days to come. For now, this is the range topper. And as a sporty electric SUV, this works. More relevant to India is obviously the Q6 e-tron. Now this gets 281 bhp, which goes up to 381 bhp with launch control activated. 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds, top speed of 210 kilometers per hour, and a range of 625 kilometers. Efficiency has been a big push of the PPE platform. The power to weight has gone up by 60%. The power density is up by 20%. It is more compact, takes 30% less space. The weight has gone down by 20%. Overall losses have gone down by a whopping 50%. Just these efficiency measures have resulted in 40 kilometers more range on the Q6 e-tron. Regeneration has also been aggressively harnessed to increase the range. Audi said that 95% of all braking is handled by regeneration. So all that energy that is wasted away in braking, that is recovered. So how the regen works is that the first time you brake and you brake gently, that's when the rear axle motor comes into play to regenerate that energy lost during braking. After that, the front motor comes into play. Brake a little harder and the front axle friction brakes come into play, and then even harder, and that's when the rear axle friction brakes come into play. But always regen is working. So even if you're hard on the brakes, full ABS braking, regen is still working. And that's why Audi say they're able to regen almost 220 kilowatts. Now the Q6 e-tron is obviously slightly down on power compared to the SQ6. It's obvious, right? The way that the power is metered out in these electric cars, the instant torque and the instant responses, it makes even the regular Q6 feel quick. Honestly, unless you've driven the SQ6, you won't ask for, nor would you feel any lack of power in the Q6 e-tron. If I were you, I'd probably pick this Q6 e-tron itself. Now, in terms of the driving dynamics, this obviously is more focused towards comfort. This car is also optioned with the adaptive air suspension. There is a base steel springs, but I don't think that's going to be coming to India because, again, you want all the bells and whistles on it, or maybe there would be a base version with steel springs and the next step up would be with the adaptive air suspension. In terms of ride comfort, like I said, even with the SQ6 and even more so with the Q6 e-tron, the ride is actually very nice. No jumping around because of the weight. It's well tied down. So you get compliance and you have that effortlessness in terms of the driving. It's just easy to drive, no hassle at all.
It's gonna get personal.
Okay, one speed breaker. Well damped. Goes nicely over it. Doesn't crash into the speed breakers. Even though now I'm taking a little faster, doesn't crash into it. The steering on the SQ6 is a little heavier than the regular Q6 e-tron. This one is more tuned towards daily driving, more comfort. Again, nothing to really complain about out here. And this version is also, this car is also on the 21-inch wheel, so it's on the biggest size wheel. You go slightly lower in terms of the wheel size and you will get better ride comfort. With the Q6 e-tron, you now also get one pedal driving. So B out here, that's brake or boost or whatever that is. But that B, that gives you one pedal driving. You can also adjust the regeneration using the paddles. As standard, you get adaptive regen. So it monitors the conditions, the data from the maps, and it changes the level of regeneration depending on what it thinks is perfectly suited to maximizing the range and efficiency. The steering precision is also good. They talked about how the steering rack is now bolted directly onto the subframe. There are no rubber bushings, so some of that play and imprecision has been eliminated. And when you come to think of it, on the road, yep, you do notice that. So let's summarize the driving dynamics. This is superior to the Q8 e-tron. The Q8 e-tron is one step up. It is bigger, it has more space, but these interiors are definitely one generation ahead of the Q8 e-tron. the ride and handling, the way the suspension has been tied down, the enthusiasm in the overall driving dynamics and character is an improvement on the Q8 e-tron. The range is good. I don't know why you would now look at a Q8 e-tron when you have this. In terms of styling also, this really does look nice. The Q8 e-tron, especially in that red, is nice and shouty and in your face, but the Q6 e-tron will also have a sportback, so that's also going to be coming soon. The Q8 will not be able to hold such a tight line at this kind of speeds around these corners, whereas this is able to do it without hassling the driver. And obviously this is the platform that's going to underpin all of Audi's mass electric vehicles. They say by 2033 they will have an electric model in every segment that they operate in. I don't know if they're going to move towards full electric mobility by 2033. I don't see that happening, considering what's happening in the EV space. But the base, the platform has everything in it for that big push towards e-mobility.
We are almost to the end of our review, so let's swap back into our SQ6 and dive into the exteriors and interiors.
So this is what Audi calls the quattro blister, and it is part of Audi's push to make technology visible. So this has come down from the RS e-tron GT, which in effect has come down from those old quattro rally cars. So quattro blisters, which adds dynamism to the overall styling of the Q6 e-tron. Now the SQ6 gets massive 21-inch wheels. The wheel sizes start from 18-inch wheels, can be optioned all the way up to 21 inches. These side blades that you see, that is obviously to highlight the batteries out here. Again, a push to make technology visible. Long wheelbase on the Q6 e-tron, and that is allied to very short overhangs, like really short overhangs. Again, that adds to the athleticism and dynamism of the overall design. Over at the front, you have this 4-eye look. So you have your eyebrows out there and then your main headlamps below that. So that's what Audi calls the 4-eye look. A DNA of Audi's electric vehicles is the inverted grille. The combustion engines have a straight up grille. This has the inverted grille, and because it is an EV, it is completely blanked out. The SQ6 also gets a little bit more muscle, but overall the Q6 e-tron, it really exudes that dynamism. Now Audi cars have always been little under the radar, muscular but little under the radar, but this has got a more expressive design language.
Depending on your mood, interest or driving pattern, you can choose between 8 different graphics for the DRLs of the Matrix LED headlights. And these are mated to corresponding graphics on the OLED tail lamps. Plus the Q6 also flashes warnings such as the proximity alert on the rear OLEDs if you tailgate the car.
One thing you will notice that these cars do not have, but the Indian cars will definitely have, is a sunroof. Now this is the SQ6, and with all Q6 e-trons, it gets this new interior architecture. They're calling it E3 1.2. That's the new electronic architecture. You get an 11.9-inch virtual cockpit, 14.5-inch infotainment. It's all put together in this curved screen, which Audi is calling the MMI panoramic screen. And the passenger also gets an optional 10.9-inch screen. Now this screen is an LCD screen, so if you're watching YouTube and there are a lot of third-party apps that you can download onto this, you as a driver can't see what your passenger is watching on YouTube, but the sound is the same, so you might get a little distracted. This is an OLED screen and it has really good resolution. The automotive OS, Android Automotive OS that is used, also works really well. So Audi has got these tiles out here, and then you have your main display, your maps, whatever you want. So nice and big. Information is very legible, and you can get to the menus, get to what you want very easily. Retains a proper hard button for the volume, which is a good thing. ESP off switch also out here. The drive select, obviously for all Audis. Now this has got the adaptive air suspension, so you can raise it in the off-road mode to clear nasty speed breakers, but otherwise in regular driving also the ground clearance is very good. You additionally have an augmented head-up display which actually integrates with the outside environment. So if you have to say on the navigation is telling you to make a right turn, that also shows up on the head-up display. That's a nice touch. What this also has is Audi's virtual assistant, which is integrated with ChatGPT. So if you ask it something and it does not know the answer, then that will anonymously ask ChatGPT and it will give you a response. So that's a way in which AI is now getting rolled out into our car world as well. Another thing I should point out, the sound system really good, but with the SQ6 you also have speakers integrated into the front headrest. So now suppose your phone is connected to CarPlay wirelessly obviously, and you're answering a call, only your driver headrest, the speaker will be working, so your passengers will not be able to clearly make out your conversation. So that's kind of little privacy that has been baked into the car. The premium platform electric is an EV only platform, and the obvious benefits of this architecture is the interior space. So it has a 2.9 meter wheelbase, and all of it goes into delivering a really nice spacious cabin. So at the front you got nice comfortable wide seats, plenty of space. This is wide as a Q8 e-tron, so shoulder width is very good. In fact, at the back you can seat 3 in comfort. You obviously have a flat floor which the EV architecture also delivers. Now the Q6 e-tron is sort of like the EV alternative to the Q5 combustion engine Q5, and this clearly has more space than a Q5. In fact, like I said, the shoulder width is as much as a Q8 e-tron, so it is plenty comfortable and plenty spacious in here.
The soft wrap extends from the doors across the entire cockpit to the center console, creating a homogeneous and enveloping feeling of space.
You get a 526-liter boot, 64-liter frunk, and that's the space, practicality, and excellent interiors on the Q6 e-tron. Whatever state the EV business is at, there is a lot riding on the backs of the Audi Q6 e-tron. It has the potential to be a disruptor. But first, let's look at the competitive landscape. There is the Tesla Model Y, not available in India. The Ford Mach-E, well, Ford is not there in India. Mercedes does not really have a like-to-like rival. There is the GLB that sits slightly lower. You have the BMW iX3, not yet launched in India. I'm sure it's going to be coming soon. And there is the Jaguar I-Pace, which I don't know, is it still on sale in India? Nobody really knows for sure because Jaguar itself isn't in the best of health. So there is a wide open space for Audi to make a solid song and dance with the Q6 e-tron, and it has the credibility to back up all that singing and dancing. The new platform works really well, solid engineering, good range, it looks really great. The interiors are excellent. In fact, the interiors are so good that potential Q8 e-tron buyers are going to look at the Q6 e-tron and will probably jump into this because this looks so much more ahead of its times than the Q8 e-tron. In fact, a lot of people are going to look at the Q6 e-tron just as a credible rival to your regular ICE Q5, X3, GLC, even the GLE, because this really has everything in it. It just so happens to be an electric car, and that's what I mean by this being a disruptor. If Audi prices this aggressively around 80 lakh rupees, say they do introductory pricing around 75 lakh rupees, and that would make this a really sweet deal. Now let's see what Audi finally prices this at.